But it is not just the low wages that Walmart pays, or the ability of Amazon not to pay any federal income taxes. It goes a lot deeper than that. And let me tell you something that I think no candidate for president perhaps has ever talked about. And that is the power structure of America. Who owns America? Who has the economic and political power to demand that Congress work for them and not just ordinary people? So it is not just Amazon and it's not just Walmart. It is about Wall Street, where 6 financial institutions have assets equivalent to 50% of the GDP of our country and control the flow of trillions of dollars. Well, you know what? Today we tell Wall Street we're going to break up the major financial institutions in this country. If a bank is too big to fail, a bank is too big to exist. But it is not just Wall Street or Walmart or Amazon that are ripping off the American people. Take a hard look at the unbelievable greed and power of the pharmaceutical industry. Listen to this. Last year, the top 10 drug companies in America made $69 billion in profit. Meanwhile, they charge you and everyone else in America the highest prices in the world by far for the medicine that they need. Insanely, and it is insane, 1 out of 5 Americans cannot afford to fill the prescriptions their doctors prescribe. Well, I've got bad news for the drug companies. We're going to cut the cost of prescription drugs by 50%, whether the drug companies like it or not. But it is not just Amazon, Walmart, Wall Street, or the drug companies. It is the insurance industry as well. You ready to take on the insurance industry? Last year, the 5 major insurance companies made $20 billion in profit while maintaining a dysfunctional system that cost us twice as much per capita for health care as any other country. You got that? We spend twice as much per person on health care as do the other countries that provide universal care. And here is what a dysfunctional health care system is about. Last year, the CEO of Aetna, a Mr. Bertolini, got a $500 million bonus for engineering a merger between Aetna and CVS. 34 million Americans have no health care. Even more are underinsured with high deductibles and high co-payments. And this system allows one man to make $500 million for a merger. Well, we have a little different vision, just a little bit, as to what a humane and rational healthcare system should look like. We believe that health care is a human right, not a privilege. We believe that the function of a health care system is to provide quality health care to all people and not to make billions for the insurance companies and outrageous compensation packages for CEOs. And that is why, despite the hundreds of millions of dollars that the insurance companies and the drug companies will spend against us, I suspect they're going to make me a very famous guy on 30-second TV ads. But despite all of their lying and all of their ads, yes, we will pass a Medicare for all single-payer program. The time is long overdue for the United States to end the international embarrassment of being the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all, and we are going to end that embarrassment. But it's not just Wall Street and the drug companies and the insurance companies. And let me say a word about something that very few people talk about, and that is we need to take on the military-industrial complex. And we say to the military-industrial complex that we will not continue to spend $700 billion a year on the military. We want and need a strong defense, but we do not have to spend more than the next 10 nations combined. We are going to invest in education. We're going to invest in affordable housing. We're going to invest in rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, but we are not going to invest in never-ending wars. And while we are on military policy, let me say a word about foreign policy, because they are obviously interrelated. Now, recently, I have been attacked in the media because of my views, actions, and votes on foreign policy issues. So let me be as clear as I can be. Yes, as a young man, along with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and many others, I marched against the war in Vietnam. A war which ravaged my generation, which left 59,000 brave young Americans dead, as well as killing over 1 million Vietnamese people. I make no apologies for having opposed that war. As a member of the House of Representatives, I helped lead the opposition to the war in Iraq. I did not believe Dick Cheney or John Bolton or President Bush and others when they told us that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction and that we had to invade that country. The war in Iraq turned out to be the worst foreign policy blunder in the modern history of our country and has led to the destabilization of that entire region with more war, more death, and more suffering. I make no apology for leading the effort against the war in Iraq. As a member of the Senate recently, I am proud to have been the lead sponsor on a resolution that, for the first time in 45 years, utilized the War Powers Act to get a majority vote in the House and the Senate to get the United States out of the horrific Saudi-led intervention in Yemen. A war that is unauthorized and a war that is unconstitutional. Frankly, if we do not end that war soon, hundreds of thousands of men, women, and children, according to the UN, will die this year in Yemen, and millions more will face starvation in years to come. I make no apologies to anyone for trying to end that horrible war. And finally, right now, this minute, I am doing everything that I can, working, by the way, with some honest conservatives in the Senate, to prevent Donald Trump and John Bolton from taking us into a war in Iran. A war which would be, in my view, much more destructive, if you can believe it, than the war in Iraq, and could lead us, literally, to perpetual warfare in that region. That not only this generation of members of the armed forces would be there, but their kids and their kids. So I make no apologies for trying to do everything that I can to make sure this country does not get into another war in the Middle East. And when we talk about corporate greed and corporate irresponsibility, there can be no greater culprit than the fossil fuel industry, an industry which lies to us every single day about the damage that they are doing to our country and the planet. And today we say to Donald Trump and his friends in the fossil fuel industry that climate change is not a hoax, but is an existential threat to our country and to the entire planet. And whether the fossil fuel industry likes it or not, we are going to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. I have 7 grandchildren here today. Beautiful, beautiful grandchildren. And what this struggle about climate change is about them and every child in this country and in the world. We have a moral responsibility to make sure that the planet we leave those children is a planet that is healthy and is habitable. And as your president, I will do everything possible to have the United States bring countries all over the world together, because we have a common enemy in climate change. Instead of spending over $1 trillion a year on weapons of destruction all over the world, what about bringing the countries together to fight the common enemy of climate change? And when we talk about injustice in this country, we are talking about racial injustice. At a time of overall and massive levels of disparity in the United States, the situation is much worse for African American families. It is not acceptable to me or to you that black families own 1/10 the wealth that white families own, that the infant mortality rate within the African American community is 2.5 times higher than the white community, that redlining in housing continues to exist, that black businesses are unable to get the loans that they need, that black school districts are underfunded, and that an enormous amount of racism exists within our criminal justice system. So let us be very clear. When we talk about justice, we mean ending institutional racism from one end of this country to the other. Brothers and sisters, when we first launched our campaign in 2015, right up in Burlington, very few people took that campaign seriously. The ideas that we talked about 4 years ago were considered by establishment politicians and mainstream media to be radical and extreme ideas. They said that nobody in America would support. Well, a lot has happened in the last 4 years. Raising the minimum wage to a living wage, not so radical today. Guaranteeing health care to all as a human right, not so radical today. Creating up to 15 million jobs by rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, not so radical today. Legalizing marijuana, a radical idea 4 years ago, not so radical today. And by the way, those ideas that we talked about 4 years ago that seemed so extreme at the time, well, today, virtually all of those ideas are supported by a majority of the American people and have overwhelming support from Democrats and independents, and they are ideas that Democratic candidates from school board to president are now supporting. Let me just conclude by telling you what we're going to do when we make it to the White House. We're going to provide universal and affordable child care for every family in America. We are going to make public colleges and universities tuition-free. And we are going to substantially lower the outrageous burden of student debt that people all over this country currently have. And when we talk about criminal justice reform, we mean that there will be no more private prisons or detention centers, no more war on drugs, No more keeping people in jail because they are too poor to afford bail. And today, we say that when we are in the White House, we are going to end the demonization of undocumented immigrants in this country. We are going to pass something that is long overdue, and that is comprehensive immigration reform and a path toward citizenship. We're going to provide legal status to the 1.8 million young people eligible for the DACA program. And we will have a humane border policy for those who seek asylum. Under our administration, babies will not be snatched from the arms of their mothers. And under our administration, Amazon, Jeff Bezos, profitable corporations, and the wealthiest people in this country will start paying their fair share of taxes. When we are in the White House, we are going to end the epidemic of gun violence in this country and pass the common sense gun safety legislation that the overwhelming majority of Americans want. People who should not have guns will not have guns. So let me conclude by saying this. This is a pivotal moment in American history. And Donald Trump and his friends believe they can win the coming election by dividing us up based on the color of our skin or where we were born or our sexual orientation or our religion. They think getting us to hate each other is their path to victory. Well, I've got news for Donald Trump. That is not a path toward victory. That is a path toward defeat. And the wealthiest people in this country will start paying their fair share of taxes. When we are in the White House, we are going to end the epidemic of gun violence in this country and pass the common sense gun safety legislation that the overwhelming majority of Americans want. People who should not have guns will not have guns. So let me conclude by saying this. This is a pivotal moment in American history. And Donald Trump and his friends believe they can win the coming election by dividing us up based on the color of our skin or where we were born or our sexual orientation or our religion. They think getting us to hate each other is their path to victory. Well, I've got news for Donald Trump. That is not a path toward victory. That is a path toward defeat. So while it is true that the 1% in this country and the profitable corporations have enormous wealth and power, it is also true that 1% is 1%. And 99% is a hell of a lot bigger number than 1%. So if we stand together and keep our eyes on the prize, we are not only going to win this election, we are going to transform this country and create the kind of nation that you know we can become. Thank you all very much.